They tried to erase Rome for 1,000 years. It took them exactly one morning. In 1453, the largest cannon ever built up to that point in human history was aimed at a single city, because that city was the last piece of the Roman Empire still standing, 11 centuries after Rome itself had already burned. Its people still called themselves Romans. Its emperor still sat on a throne he claimed that came directly from Julius Caesar. And on a Tuesday morning in May, everything that connected the ancient world to the modern one simply stopped existing, not with a whimper, but with a breach in a wall that had never once been broken by force in 1,000 years. This is the empire that outlived Rome by a millennium. And this is exactly how, after surviving plagues, betrayal, and 23 sieges, it finally ran out of time. Here's what almost nobody outside a history classroom actually knows. What we call the Byzantine Empire never called itself that. That name was invented centuries after it was gone. To the people living inside it, it was simply Rome. The same Rome, unbroken, just moved to a new capital. This is the story of how that Rome survived 1,000 years longer than anyone had any right to expect. Through plagues, civil wars, betrayal by its own allies, and a slow bleeding of territory that would have finished off almost any other empire. And it's the story of exactly how, and exactly why, it finally ran out of time. In 330 AD, Emperor Constantine made a decision that quietly saved half the Roman Empire from history's dumpster fire. He founded a new capital on the site of an old Greek trading town called Byzantium, sitting at the exact point where Europe and Asia nearly touch. He named it after himself, Constantinople. Unlike Rome, this city sat on a peninsula guarded by water on 3 sides, with a chain that could physically seal off its harbor from enemy ships. When the Western Roman Empire collapsed in 476 AD under Gothic and Vandal invasions, this eastern half didn't just survive, it thrived. Different tax base, different geography, different enemies. The West fell. The East kept minting Roman coins for another 1,000 years. This is the detail that gets lost every time someone says, Rome fell in 476. Rome didn't fall in 476. Half of it did. The other half kept functioning as a genuine Roman state, with Roman law, Roman bureaucracy, and a Roman army, for roughly as long as the entire history of the United States could fit inside it. Twice. 2 centuries later, Emperor Justinian tried to do something audacious: reconquer the entire Western Roman Empire and put it back together. His armies retook Italy, North Africa, and parts of Spain. It worked, for a while. But the campaigns bankrupted the treasury, and right as Justinian was celebrating his reunified empire, a plague arrived that would kill an estimated 25 million people. The plague of Justinian hit Constantinople so hard that at its peak, the city was reportedly burying 5,000 people a day. Some historians believe it killed close to half the empire's population within a few years. Justinian's reunified Rome outlived Justinian by only decades. The empire that was left behind was smaller, poorer, and surrounded by enemies who had noticed exactly how weak it had just become. In the 7th century, a new religion born in Arabia turned into the fastest military expansion the world had ever seen. Islamic armies tore through Byzantine territory in Syria, Egypt, and North Africa, provinces that had been Roman for 700 years, in less than a decade. The empire lost more than half its territory and most of its tax revenue almost overnight. And then the same armies showed up outside Constantinople itself, not once, but twice, laying siege to the city for months at a time. Constantinople should have fallen both times. It didn't, because of a weapon so effective and so closely guarded that its exact recipe has been lost to history. Greek fire, a liquid incendiary that could be sprayed from ships and kept burning even on water. Nobody outside a tiny circle of Byzantine engineers ever knew the formula. Not the enemies who watched it burn their fleets, and not historians today. It saved the city twice, and the secret died with the empire that invented it. The other thing that saved Constantinople was the walls themselves. Built under Emperor Theodosius in the 5th century, a triple line of fortifications, moat, outer wall, inner wall, that no army would successfully breach by force for over 1,000 years. What gets me about this period is how close the whole idea of the West came to not existing in any recognizable form. If Constantinople falls in the 8th century instead of the 15th, there's no buffer left between an expanding Islamic caliphate and a fractured, disorganized Western Europe. An enormous amount of medieval European history exists specifically because this one city, on this one peninsula, refused to fall for 700 extra years. By the 9th and 10th centuries, Byzantium clawed its way back to genuine power. Under emperors like Basil II, the empire expanded again. Its economy boomed, and Constantinople became the richest, most sophisticated city in the entire Christian world. Bigger and wealthier than anything in Western Europe. Visitors from Western Europe arrived in Constantinople and were stunned. Compared to the muddy, small timber towns they'd left behind, this was a city of marble, running water, and libraries preserving classical texts that had vanished everywhere else. But wealth and power created their own slow-burning problem. For centuries, the Christian Church had technically been one institution, split between a pope in Rome and a patriarch in Constantinople who never fully agreed on who was actually in charge. In 1054, that tension finally snapped. Disputes over authority, ritual, and theology led to mutual excommunications, the Pope and the Patriarch each declaring the other side heretical. This became known as the Great Schism, and it split Christianity into Catholic and Orthodox branches permanently. It might sound like a technical religious dispute. It wasn't. It meant that when Byzantium eventually needed Western Christian military help most, an entire theological wall of suspicion and resentment already stood in the way. Then, in 1204, disaster arrived, not from a foreign enemy, but from fellow Christians. A Crusader army, originally sent to fight in the Holy Land, got diverted, ran out of money, and instead of continuing to Jerusalem, turned around and sacked Constantinople itself. For 3 days, Western European knights, supposedly on a holy mission, looted the wealthiest Christian city on earth. Priceless relics, gold, entire libraries of ancient manuscripts were stolen, destroyed, or melted down for their metal. The empire's own capital was carved up and handed to Western nobles. It would take 57 years for a Byzantine army to retake its own city. If you only remember one thing from this chapter, make it this. Constantinople didn't fall to the Ottomans in 1453 as a healthy empire suddenly struck down. It fell as a shell of what it used to be, and the wound that never really healed was inflicted in 1204 by other Christians, not by outsiders in any meaningful sense. The empire spent its final 2 centuries essentially bleeding out from a self-inflicted, allied betrayal. The empire that recaptured Constantinople in 1261 was a fraction of its former self. Its treasury was empty. Its population had collapsed. Territory that once stretched across 3 continents had shrunk to little more than the city itself, a strip of Greek coastline and scattered islands. Its economy never recovered either. Italian merchant states like Venice and Genoa had used the chaos of the Crusader occupation to seize control of Byzantine trade routes and tax collection in the region. By the 14th century, foreign merchants were making more money off Constantinople's own harbor than the Byzantine treasury was. An empire that once controlled the wealthiest trade routes on Earth was now effectively a landlord collecting scraps from tenants who used to be its subjects. Meanwhile, a new power was rising just across the water. The Ottoman Turks, originally a small frontier principality, expanded with terrifying speed through Anatolia and then into the Balkans, surrounding what was left of Byzantium on almost every side. Byzantine emperors spent their final decades doing something almost unthinkable for the once mighty Roman successor state: touring European capitals, begging for military help against the Ottomans. Some even agreed to merge the Orthodox and Catholic churches, hoping it would buy Western support. It rarely worked. Western Europe was distracted by its own wars and centuries of resentment, dating back to 1204 and the Great Schism before it, meant most rulers simply weren't interested in saving a city, many of them still viewed as heretical or foreign. In 1451, a 19-year-old sultan named Mehmed II took the Ottoman throne. Everyone underestimated him. That was a mistake. Mehmed had one obsession: taking Constantinople, a city that had defied every conqueror for 1100 years. Mehmed commissioned a Hungarian engineer named Orban to build the largest cannon the world had ever seen, a bronze monster nearly 9 meters long, capable of firing stone balls weighing over 270 kilograms. It took 60 oxen and hundreds of men just to move it into position outside the walls that had never fallen to a direct assault. On April 6, 1453, the bombardment began. Inside the city, the defenders numbered perhaps 8,000 men. Outside, Mehmed had assembled an army of somewhere between 60 and 80,000. The mathematics were not subtle. Yet for nearly 2 months, the city held. The ancient walls, repaired nightly by exhausted defenders, absorbed cannon fire that would have leveled any other fortification in Europe. Constantine XI, the last Roman emperor, walked the battlements personally every night. The defenders had one more trick left: a giant chain stretched across the harbor entrance, physically blocking Ottoman ships from sailing in to attack from the weaker sea walls. The defenders weren't only Byzantine. A Genoese nobleman named Giovanni Giustiniani arrived with roughly 700 professional soldiers, paid for out of his own pocket, and Constantine put him in command of the land walls, the single most critical section of the entire defense. For weeks, Giustiniani's men held the point where the fighting was heaviest, plugging breaches almost as fast as the cannon opened them. Venice and Genoa were bitter commercial rivals who had fought each other for control of Mediterranean trade for over a century. And yet, inside Constantinople, their soldiers and sailors fought side by side against a common enemy, because both cities had trading colonies inside the city worth protecting. It very nearly worked. On the final night of the siege, during the last assault, Giustiniani was struck and severely wounded. He was carried from the walls, to a ship in the harbor. And the moment his men saw their commander leave his post, something the Byzantine defense could not survive happened. The line broke. Some historians argue that single moment, one wounded commander being pulled from the wall at the worst possible second, is what actually decided the fate of an 1,100-year-old empire, more than the cannon, more than the ships hauled overland. A defense that had held for weeks unraveled in minutes once the men holding the most dangerous section of wall believed their leader was gone. I think this detail matters because it's so easy to tell this story as inevitable. A doomed city facing overwhelming force, guaranteed to fall eventually. But the accounts from the final night suggest something messier and more human. An exhausted, outnumbered defense that had actually held, until one wounded man was carried away and the soldiers around him lost their nerve. Empires don't always collapse because they were destined to. Sometimes they collapse in the last 5 minutes, for reasons that have nothing to do with the previous 1,000 years. Mehmed's response was one of the most audacious moves in military history. Unable to break the chain, he ordered his ships hauled overland, on greased logs at night, bypassing the barrier entirely and launching them directly into the harbor from behind. This single decision is, in my opinion, the most underrated piece of military engineering in the entire medieval period. Moving an entire fleet over a hill in one night isn't the kind of thing that happens because someone got lucky. It happens because someone was patient, methodical, and willing to solve an impossible problem with brute logistics instead of brute force. Mehmed won this siege as much with planning as with cannons. On May 29, 1453, after weeks of continuous bombardment, a section of the wall finally gave way. Mehmed launched his final assault before dawn. Wave after wave of soldiers, the Sultan's elite janissaries held in reserve for the decisive push. Constantine XI, seeing the walls breached and the city lost, reportedly tore off his imperial regalia so he wouldn't be identified and captured. He walked into the fighting as an ordinary soldier and was never seen again. His body was never confirmed. By midday, the city that had stood for 1,100 years survived 23 sieges and outlasted the empire it was born from, fell in a single morning. Mehmed rode into the city and went straight to the Hagia Sophia, for 900 years the largest church in the world. He didn't destroy it. He converted it into a mosque, a decision that preserved the building for the next 5.5 centuries. Byzantine scholars fled west, carrying with them ancient Greek and Roman manuscripts that had been preserved in Constantinople's libraries for 1,000 years. Many historians consider this exodus one of the direct sparks of the European Renaissance. The Ottoman Empire that rose from Constantinople's ashes would go on to rule for another 470 years, eventually controlling territory across 3 continents, inheriting, in a strange way, the exact geographic role the Byzantines had once played. Here's the thing I keep coming back to with this story. Constantinople didn't fall because its people were weak, or cowardly, or unprepared. It fell because an empire can only run on borrowed time for so long, once its economy, its allies, and its population have all been hollowed out from decades of disaster. The walls held for 1,100 years. In the end, it wasn't the walls that failed. It was everything else around them. The empire is gone. But its capital never stopped existing. It just changed names, changed religions, and kept standing exactly where Constantine put it 1,700 years ago. If you want to see what happens when an empire actually has to fight its way back from the brink, not 1,000 years of slow decline, but a direct, unstoppable military machine, the Mongol conquest is waiting for you. Click it right now.